Who's staying, who's going, and who's coming in for Syracuse basketball in 2024-2025.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and hey, it's March 15th on this beautiful Friday, and, well, it's never too early to have a roster prediction for Syracuse basketball next season, 2024-2025, what could be potentially a huge year for the Orange, perhaps getting back into the national rankings for the first time in a few years, perhaps just making the tournament. Well, today is about, what do we think is going to happen down the road? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, early roster predictions for Syracuse basketball next season. Let's start with who I think is going to stay. And before we really get to it, I just want to point out with the transfer portal that for the most part, this is entirely up to the players. Okay, the players are the ones who are going to dictate whether they want to stay or whether they want to leave. This is not a situation like Benny Williams where he was just outright dismissed from the team. So we can want a guy to transfer all we want. He doesn't have to transfer. We can want a guy to come in. He doesn't have to come. But we do know also the freshmen that are coming in for Syracuse, and we're going to get to them soon. But first, all right, time for who I think is going to stay for this team and is probably going to start on day one next season. Starting off with point guard. Starting for Syracuse, my way too early prediction is Quadir Copeland. That's right. Quadir Copeland, as of right now, I believe will be the starting point guard for Syracuse next season. He was the runner-up for the sixth man of the year. He showed tremendous progress this season. And if Syracuse can have a strong transfer portal class combined with the incoming freshmen, I think I'm okay with Copeland being the starting point guard. I think he can take that next step. I saw someone call him the next Magic Johnson. Well, he's not the next Magic Johnson. He will never be Magic Johnson, but that's okay. We don't need him to be that way. We just need him to be able to run the show next season, distribute the basketball for hopefully a more talented squad. Now, Copeland does need to work on his decision-making. Of course, he had 6 turnovers against NC State. He tends to get in the lane and throw the ball away. But what I like about Copeland is he plays with a ton of energy, and you can tell at times he's really the heart and soul of this team. So I believe that he's going to stay at Syracuse, especially because there's a big player that I think is going to leave. And he's going to get a new role next season and be a starter rather than being the first guy off the bench. He should have been sixth man of the year. Moving on. Starting at shooting guard and who's staying, I think it's going to be J.J. Starling. I cannot see him going anywhere. He was one of the top transfers last season. He struggled in the first half of this year, recovering from shoulder surgery and also just adjusting to a new team. He's a former 5-star recruit. As I said, one of the top transfers in last year's class. And I thought he performed pretty well. He can be inconsistent at times. You can't necessarily bank on everything, but hey, he's a double-digit scorer per game. He has shown the ability to have some range. Now it's about next year taking that next step and being more consistent, which is, of course, possible considering he was recovering from surgery. Now, Starting at small forward next season and staying more importantly, I think it's going to be Chris Bell. I think Chris Bell is going to stay with this team. He once again, like Copeland, he really grew this season into by far and away the team's best shooter. He is the only guy really on this roster right now who can go nuclear. I have trouble saying that word, nuclear. And by that, I mean he can explode at any moment. You never quite know, but he's the type of guy that can hit 6 threes in 7 minutes and completely bury a team. So I think Chris Bell is going to stay, and I think he's going to be the starter, but it's possible he'll come off the bench. Other guys that I think are going to stay, Chance Westry, who I think is the biggest mystery on the team. I don't really know what to expect from him. He was a 4-star transfer heading into this season. He was hurt for Auburn, and then he got hurt in the preseason for Syracuse. So we really haven't seen much. He was a top high school recruit. We know that. But he's one of the bigger mysteries for next season. Hopefully he's a good player because Syracuse needs them. I think Malik Brown is also going to stay, but he might be in a slightly lesser role. He might leave because of that, but I think as of right now, I would predict him to stay. Naheem McLeod, obviously he transferred into this season. He transferred to Syracuse for this year. He got hurt. He, I think, was asked to do too much, and a lot of expectations were put on Naheem McLeod, and he couldn't necessarily live up to them, but that's okay. I think if he's the backup center for next season, I think that is a fine role for him. I think he can thrive in that role. If he's playing 10 to 15 minutes, can be an elite rim protector, provide size on the floor. If Syracuse gets another transfer, perhaps he comes in and him, another center, and Donnie Freeman on the floor at the same time. If Syracuse wants to go tall, right? They can go tall, I guess. I think Naheem McLeod will stay with this team. William Patterson was the only freshman on the team this year. I think he's not going anywhere. I think he'll just continue his development. I don't know what his role will be next year. I envision it's not going to be a big one. Now, having said that, if William Patterson has a big role next year and takes a huge jump in development, that's awesome for Syracuse. I just don't know if next season is really the year where he'll start to pop. Maybe it'll be the season after. And finally, I think right now on this current roster, who is going to stay is Kyle Cuff. Kyle Cuff is a backup guard. I think we all know that by now. He's a pit bull. He's a guy who can provide toughness for this team, but you never really want to play him more than 7 to 10 minutes a night. I think he's more effective when he comes off the bench, can provide energy, similar to Quadir Copeland, but not as talented as Quadir Copeland. So I think Kyle Cuff is going to stay. So rounding out everyone on the roster right now who I think is going to stay: Quadir Copeland, J.J. Starling, Chris Bell, Chance Westry, Malik Brown, Naheem McLeod, William Patterson, and Kyle Cuff, I believe, will all be back for next season. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risks, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Amazon Fire TV is the place I get the top streaming apps and channels for movies like TV and for watching Syracuse games and the ACC tournament. Right here, as of now, 4 teams left. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Mark your calendar for the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown Show Monday, March 18th at 7 a.m. Eastern. Experts Andy Patton and Isaac Shade will break down their brackets and discuss everything that you need to know to fill out a winning bracket and prepare for this year's NCAA tournament, which Syracuse is not going to be in it this year, but still, it's very exciting. Find the Locked On Bracket Breakdown on Monday, March 18th on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. We discussed who is going to stay on this current roster right now for Syracuse, but now it's time to talk about who is probably out the door. And the big one, who I think is going to ultimately leave this roster, is Judah Mintz. Now, I hinted at it because I had Quadir Copeland as the starting point guard for next season. I think Mintz is out the door. I think what Judah is going to do, just off the top of my head, last year, if you recall, he declared for the NBA draft while maintaining his eligibility for college. I think he's going to do the same thing with the twist. He'll declare for the NBA draft, but he's going to also enter the transfer portal. If I recall correctly, that's what Joe Girard did last season. He declared for the NBA, but also maintained his college eligibility while also entering the transfer portal. I think Judah Mintz, I don't know if he's necessarily run his course, because I want him back. I want Judah Mintz to stay. And I think you should too. Because for all his faults that he may have, right? He's not the greatest shooter in the world. He did not improve that shot from last season to this season like we hoped. He is still right now the team's best scorer. And how many guys do you have just lying around that can get you 18 a game? He's second team all conference. He is, without question, one of the 4 best guards in the ACC. And if he were to enter the transfer portal like I think he will, he is going to be probably one of the 5 best available. Maybe even higher than 5. Maybe even one of the top 3 transfers. I think we should want him to stay. I really do. But ultimately, like I said off the top, this is players' decision. The players make up their minds of what they want to do. I think Judah's going to leave. Maybe he'll stay. I don't know. But I think he's out the door, and Quadir Copeland will be the starting point guard for next season. The other guys that I have transferring out the door, Justin Taylor, I think he's going to go. And the reasoning for that is Listen, there was some stuff that was said yesterday or last night on Twitter that was quite frankly shameful. But I think there's a fair way to criticize Justin Taylor in the season that he's had. Right? He basically went through a month and he basically this season went about a month and a half at one point of getting anywhere between like 0 and 3 points. Right? He showed a couple of flashes towards the end of the season that he can cut to the rim, right? And hit some foul shots, which is nice. But ultimately, I think he would be better served in his development to probably go a league below. I think that would work. That could do wonders for him. And then he goes a step below, has a good year, and then comes back into the Power Six. I could easily see that happening for Justin Taylor. But right now, especially with the fact that you have these two new freshmen coming in, combined with other transfers that can come in for Syracuse. I don't know if Justin Taylor will most likely not have a starting job next season. And I don't know if he's going to be one of the 3 or 4 first guys to come off the bench. So just by his role alone, I think he might be better served in his development to go transfer. Ultimately, though, it like I've said repeatedly, it is his decision, right? It's his choice. But that's just what I think he's going to do. And the other guy, this is a sneaky one. This is a sneaky one here, but if Syracuse is going to bring in a transfer center, which we're going to get into with who's coming in, I think Peter Carey might leave. Because think about the current depth chart right now on this team. And think about opportunities, right? You have Naheem McLeod probably coming back. You have William Patterson coming back. And if you bring in a transfer center who likely would be the starting center, Peter Carey all of a sudden is 3rd or 4th on the depth chart and is once again not seeing the floor much. So I think he might leave to find a better opportunity where he can be a starting center, perhaps not in a Power 6 conference, but similar to Justin Taylor, he can maybe have a good year outside of the Power 6 and then transfer back in, at least establish himself as a backup, maybe even starter one day. But I think Peter Carey is probably out the door, especially if Syracuse brings in a starting caliber center, which is going to lead to our next topic, which is who's coming in. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Tennessee Vols can only be described as a Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves after claiming the top spot in the SEC. Player of the Year candidate Dalton Knecht has carried the Vols all season and made them a team to watch in March. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. It's Locked On Syracuse, and I'm Jackson Holzer here on this Friday doing way too early roster predictions for the 2024-2025 Syracuse men's basketball season. We've talked about who I think is going to stay, who's leaving. I have 3 guys leaving as of now: Judah Mintz, Justin Taylor, Peter Carey. Now it's time to discuss who is coming in. Now, for certain, we know that 2 freshmen are coming in this year, 2 highly sought-after freshmen. Donovan Freeman, a 5-star recruit, 6'11" power forward. He's going to provide size for this team. Freshman is never really easy to know what to expect. Benny Williams was a top recruit, came in, couldn't do anything. Judah Mintz was a top recruit. Obviously, he's panned out, so you never quite know. But Donnie Freeman, at least right now, projects to be someone who is at least going to provide size at 6'11", probably will be the starting power forward. He might be able to play center. I don't know if they would use him in that regard, but he does have the size for it. So Donnie Freeman coming in at power forward, 6'11". Think he's definitely coming in, obviously. And the other one is Ajogbor, who is a guard from New York, who's a 4-star recruit who recently had a 67-point game. It's great. I saw that. It's awesome. He can provide shooting for this team. But again, you never really know what freshmen are going to provide in year one. It's maybe a little bit unfair to project so much for him in his first season, especially when it's a 4-star recruit. Like Donnie Freeman is a 5, and you're hoping he's a type of player who can be a one and done. Now, obviously, you don't want him to go one and done, but be that caliber player. It's, I think, a little unfair for Ajogbor to expect him right away to have a role, but nevertheless, he is coming in and should be able to provide shooting for this team, which is something that they desperately, desperately need. They need shooting and they need size, and with those freshmen coming in, Donnie Freeman, 6'11", that's size. Ajogbor shooting, there you go, right? Solid freshman class. Now, transfers. I'm not going to get too into the weeds about who are specific targets because I think that's a different video for a different day. I will give you 2 names, though, just an early preview because, look, the transfer portal is not really fully open, so to speak, right? There's still a whole season to go right here, right? There's still the tournament and everything. But I believe that Syracuse is going to bring in a transfer starting caliber center. And the one that so far sticks out is Justice Ajogbor from Harvard. He is an elite rim protector. He averaged about 3 blocks per game in the Ivy League this year, led the conference by a mile. He can move. I think he just needs a little bit more playing time. He only played around 20 minutes per game for Harvard this season. I think he can step in and be a starting center. These 6'10", 6'11-ish, Syracuse doesn't need to have the best center in the country. They just need someone who can be a starter, play 25 to 30 minutes, and then have McLeod come off the bench and spare those rest of it. So I think Ajogbor makes a lot of sense for this team as a rim protector, providing size, can rebound. And I think also Syracuse is going to bring in a forward from the transfer portal. And the one that really sticks out right now is Michael Ajayi from Pepperdine. He was first team all WCC this season. He's 6'7". He averaged 17 points and 10 rebounds as a forward. As a forward, he averaged 17 and 10. So there you go. Rebounding, obviously a big need. But what else does Syracuse need? Shooting, right? This guy last year shot 47% from the three-point line. Guys, this is basically the perfect player for Syracuse right now. This is the perfect player. Michael Ajayi might come in and he would come in next season and be the best player on the team. This is someone that Syracuse really, really, really could use. I think they're going to bring in a transfer forward that can start. This is the type of guy that Syracuse needs to go after. Someone who can score, who can rebound, who can defend. He was first team all conference, and he can shoot the basketball. He can do basically everything. And there's plenty of more names that are going to come available, but these are just 2. Justice Ajogbor from Harvard, he's a center. Michael Ajayi from Pepperdine, first team all WCC this season. Those are just a couple of guys who I think would really help this Syracuse squad next season. So rounding it all out, we've done who is staying, who is going, who is coming in for certain, who might come in as well. As of right now, the roster that I have 12 listed. The guards would be Quadir Copeland, J.J. Starling, Chance Westry, Ajogbor, and Kyle Cuff. Those would be the 5 guards. The forwards, would be Chris Bell, Malik Brown, Donnie Freeman, and a transfer. So hopefully that transfer is, a guy like Ajayi, and you're looking at maybe the best 4 forward tandem in the country. Seriously, if they got a guy like Michael Ajayi with Chris Bell, Malik Brown, and Donnie Freeman, that might be the best forward group in the country. And centers. I think they're going to bring in a transfer center. That is what I have listed right now is Justice Ajogbor from Harvard, Naheem McLeod coming back, and William Patterson coming back as well. So that brings the whole roster to 12. Of course, there's still more technically on the roster, but that's what I have for now. It's still super duper early. There are still plenty of names that can come available. We don't know who's staying or who's leaving for certain. These are just way too early roster predictions for Syracuse basketball next season. And if they can accomplish this, I wouldn't even call this really a hopeful one. I would just say this is a kind of realistic one. Looks pretty good on paper. Looks pretty good. And then it's all about execution, right? No excuses for next season. None. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And hey, if you liked it, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. More content coming right now as we speak with Pull Friday dropping in just a few hours because, hey, I'm making Pull Friday its own separate segment. Going to be about a 10 to 12 minute video here, just so it's not always a 30-minute podcast. Plus, a new segment of the week is going to drop tomorrow where I'll just pick a segment from one of the podcasts where you can just relive one segment on the channel. This way we can have some weekend content just so it doesn't all go away during the weekend. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with the podcast and the background on Monday.